Today I'm doing a Rainbow Six Siege site tier list. I made a video like this last year, however, as we know in Operation Deadly Omen, the sites in particular got reworked, so now there's only 1x sites and 2.5s. So that last video is now outdated. However, this gives me an opportunity to update it, and because some of my opinions have changed just a little bit. All the sites in this game are personal preference, so I might put a site in S tier that you probably would put a little bit lower. One thing to note is I'm talking about the universal sights first, and then I'll go over to the guns exclusive weapons. So I'm talking about like hides, handgun, Kali sniper, yada yada. So with all that out of the way, let's go ahead and start the video. I'm going to go ahead and talk about the ACOGs. That is the original 1.5, the original ACOG we saw back in year 1 and year 5, and the Russian ACOG. So as for the 1.5 scope itself, I'm probably going to put it in S tier, because it's still a pretty good choice because of the casing of the 1.5. It's not too visually cluttered. The only thing I don't like about the 1.5, especially now after it's now an ACOG, is the reticle itself. It used to be very small, but I guess because they zoomed it in, now the reticle is bigger, and I personally don't like that. However, it's still a pretty good choice. I just don't run on every gun. Now moving on to the original ACOG, I'm going to put it in A tier because I think the casing of the original ACOG is way bigger than the 1.5, and for some people, they don't like that. But I think the reticle is better, and that, again, is personal preference. I'm more comfortable with something like that, and it's more nostalgic than the 1.5. Especially with a gun like the Oversea, it just looks way better, in my opinion. Something about the 1.5 just looks off, especially on like these newer guns. I'm not sure if that's just me or not. Now time for the Russian ACOG. I personally think the reticle is way worse than the 1.5 and original ACOG. The casing is better than the original ACOG. So if you don't care about the reticle, then I think this would be a good choice for you. But personally, I'm going to put it B. And specifically, I don't really use it on any operator. I either use the original ACOG more, or even in some cases, like I run the 1.5 on 0, SE3000, for example. But I don't think I would ever run this over any one of the ACOGs. Moving on to the 3.5 scopes that you can only find on DMRs. I'm going to be honest, I'm going to put both of them in C tier. Not because the casing of the sights or even the reticles are bad. It's just strictly because it is a 3.5 and you can only find them on DMRs. So you're not really going to see much viability on them. And because they are so zoomed in, most people are not going to even use them on DMRs, because the ACOGs would just be better for that, because you can play a little bit more close range with them. And it's sad for me because the original 2x scope was my favorite sight they ever had, and it's just sad to see me never use it again. Finally, going over to the Holo sights, I'm going to put the Holo A in A tier, because this is like the original Holo you would use back in the day. However, it would be S tier if they didn't change the middle reticle to be slightly bigger. Especially in the game when you have to hold a lot of angles, that does kind of screw you over a little bit, but I do think the casing's pretty good. The reticle itself is clean, even despite the middle dot being a bit bigger. Overall, probably still one of my most used sights in the game, and it's still fun to use. Moving on to the Holo B, I'm going to put it in S tier because it's like the Holo A, however, the casing of it is smaller while the reticle is still being the same, so I feel like for a lot of people it would be better. And especially on certain guns like the 416 on Jaeger, it just feels better for me. Moving on to the Cybertruck Holo, I'm going to put it B. I don't hate it as much as other people do, but especially compared to the other two Holos, I would never use this. Maybe as a troll pick, and it's kind of fun to use, but other than that, I don't really see myself ever using this. Now moving on to the Russian Holo, which I never use the sight, so I'm going to put a D. And the reason why I don't use it is because the reticle I don't like. It's kind of like a T-shaped reticle. I prefer having a middle dot or a triangle, and this doesn't have it, and so that's why I don't use it. I think it's very awkward to aim with. I guess you could say that's a skill issue, which is fair, I guess, but I'm never using this sight, ever. Moving over to the red dots, starting with the red dot A. I'm not really a big fan of the red dots in this game, so I guess I'll put the original one in B, because the center dot is just fine. That's what a red dot does, and there's nothing to complain about that with. And the casing is not that bad too. I do think it's a bit ugly, but, you know, it's not that bad. It's just the main issue, like I said, is I don't use red dots because I'm either using ACOG or Holos, and that's the main complaint I have with all the red dots. Except for the red dot B, because I don't like the reticle of it, so I'm going to put it right next to the 3x scopes. It does have the middle red dot, and it's actually smaller than the OG red dot. However, it has this circle pattern and then like the mini pyramid triangle thing at the bottom. I don't like that. I wish it was just the regular red dot. And honestly, if it was just that middle dot by itself, it honestly would be a really good site. And I think a lot of people would use that. But just because of that texture it has for the actual reticle, I personally wouldn't use it. The casing is not that bad either. Like I said, if it just had the middle dot, I would probably run it on every gun. I'm not even kidding. Moving over to the red dot C, now it's nearly identical to the original red dot. The casing is pretty good and it has the middle dot. However, on the right of it, it has this little thing, I don't know what to call it, and I think it's just kind of distracting and annoying to look at. So other than that, it's pretty much the same as the original red dot, so I put it in B. Moving over to the reflexes, I'm going to put the Reflex A in B, and I may as well put the Reflex C also there because they're pretty much the exact same site. There's no difference other than I think the Reflex C is just a little bit smaller than the Reflex A. So I'm just going to lump them together and to save time a little bit because they're practically the same site. However, I'm going to put the Reflex B at the top of B tier, making it the best site in B tier, I guess you could say. And that's because back during Demonville, when they introduced the change to make all 1x sites universal, they had to specifically change the Reflex B because it was a lot smaller than every other reticle in the game, and it was probably the most popular one to use during the test server because it looks so clean and small. People even used it over the 1.5 back in the day, when the 1.5 was at its peak. But during that test server, they changed it to make it look a lot bigger. And now it's more comparable to the other reflexes and other sites that I would say, makes it a lot worse. It's not a bad choice by any means. It still does look kind of cool in my opinion. But if they did not do that change of it, honestly, it would probably be an S tier right next to the Holo and 1.5. But because that change happened, I'm going to put it in B. Going over to the gun exclusive sites, we have Glaz. I personally don't think it's that bad. It is a 6x scope. However, it can't go over to a 1x. So I'm going to go ahead and put it in B because you could kind of get the best of both worlds, I guess you could say. Next up is Kaiden Nomad's 44 Magnum. I'm going to put it in B tier because it is a 3x scope on a pistol, and because of that, the recoil is horrendous, and I don't even use that gun because of that, so I'm just going to put it on the lowest tier. Next up is the 6 and 12x scope for Kali. You can switch in between them, but for both of them, especially in a game like this, it's not that good. I'm going to put it above the 44 Magnum. It's somewhat usable, I guess, as a sniper, but you're better off running an ACOG. Next up is the P10 red dot that you can find on Warden, and honestly, it's not that bad. I'm going to put it A tier. It's like the other red dots, but the casing of it is way smaller, and if it was available on every other gun, I would put it S tier right next to the Holo B in red 1.5. Next up is the Chonka's LMG site. I'm not sure if it's considered a reflex or not, but it's only available on the LMG, and it doesn't really look that good. Looks a little bit clunky. The reticle is not that bad, but if it was available on other guns, I'd probably put it B, but since it's only on his LMG, and no one really uses it on his LMG, I'm probably going to put it in C tier. Nothing else to really say about it. It's very unfortunate that it's only on the Chonka's LMG. Last up is the Vendetta scope you can find on Deimos. It's actually a pretty good site. It's only available on the revolver, however, which does bring it down a bit, I guess, but I'm still going to put it A tier. It's not on the actual tier list, so pretend I did put it on A. And that's it for the video. You will likely disagree with me on a few of my placements, which is totally understandable, because it's all personal preference like I said at the beginning, and I would like to know what your opinion is in the comments. Now, before the video ends, I want to say that Operation Twin Shells have been revealed, so I'm probably going to be making a video on the operator likely when the test server comes out, so stay tuned for that. But with all that said, I am Carter Tony. If you like what I make, I appreciate it if you subscribe, and with all that said, have a good day, good night, and goodbye.